Well, Callum, good to have you back, son. We've had a few technical issues with somebody else there, so hopefully we can get him on for you. So, don't know what's going on. I came out of a few pints on him. Callum, what do you think?
I'm not sure, but I'm delighted to be back on anyway, so we'll crack on.
Good, good. Just before we start, I want to thank Enda Dempsey here for the wee intro video. He's a friend of my dad's, and it's gives it a wee bit more spice, Callum. I think coming in seems a bit more of a
100%,
sports
like.
show now. But Callum, honestly, it's been a long time coming because so many people have been asking me to bring this show back. And like I always said when I started this, wasn't about me or you or anyone. It was about everyone enjoying it, and gladly so many people do enjoy it, and people like yourself enjoy coming on. And I don't know what it is. I love watching loads of podcasts around England and stuff, but it seems to be when people know the people or they can relate to them or from the same city, they just seem to enjoy it more. I don't know about you.
100%. My knowledge, I don't really know any other dairy podcasts, like, so it's good to get on. Even when I'm not on, I always watch them too, like, so it's good to be back.
Well, we have to give Barry Davy a shout out and Scantull there. So, but they're more League of Ireland. We're more Premier League based. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Obviously, today we had the Premier League fixtures released, Callum. Don't know about you. Last night I was kind of like could hardly sleep at all, thinking about how you Spurs are going to be playing first game. And I know last night me and you were kind of exchanging messages because there were so many leaks and stuff, and who was going to be playing who, and we must have seen 3 or 4 different ones. And it wasn't until really this morning when I woke up, I found out about an hour before who Spurs was going to be playing. And I actually said to you who Liverpool was as well. So it just shows you the excitement around the fixture list coming out that so many people get a big thrill out of just releasing fake fixtures.
I know. As you say, we were talking about it last night, but I'm already all day. I was buzzing just to get on to even talk about it. Like, a season doesn't start for another, 8 weeks or whatever it is, but I'm buzzing to get on, chat about it already. Like.
I think this year, because of the season kind of only really finished there on Saturday with the Champions League final, which we will talk about in a wee bit. It hasn't been such a build up to the fixtures. Because it was only on Saturday we were talking about Man City winning the treble, and then all of a sudden today it was the fixtures getting released. Whereas usually, which we'll see next season, it's going to be like the first normal season for what 4 or 5, at least 4 years, where the
Must be,
season will
yeah.
kind of finish in middle of May and we'll not get the fixtures till middle of June. So there'll be like a 4 week wait. So I think a lot of people this year were just so happy to get the fixtures out, and as you say, Callum, we're about what 6, 7 weeks away.
Buzzing, hey. I don't know. As you say, so I think the league ends like the 19th of May, no, next season now. So as you say, it's just been kind of been flat out now since like before, or just with COVID is like the seasons haven't been normal since then. Like, so I was still everyone's probably still hanging about that treble and all that as well. But I'm buzzing. I can't wait to get on chat about the fixtures now.
We'll start. We're going to talk about loads on the podcast. We're going to be talking Man City's treble, Arsenal back end of last season. It all kind of fell apart for them. Going to be talking about your mob, Callum, Liverpool. What's it going to take for them to get back to the top? United, are they any closer under Ten Hag now after finishing third, winning a trophy? New managers at Spurs, Chelsea, obviously at Celtic too. Well, it looks to be pretty close to Brent and Rodgers. We'll touch on that as well as a lot of transfer news. And we were kind of talking before the show. There seems to have been a lot today. So there's so many stories to catch up on. But look, first Friday night of the season, we were kind of thinking, who's it going to be? Is it going to be? I actually thought it was going to be Luton at home, but you kind of spoke to me during the week and says Luton have requested an away game. So then when I heard that, I obviously knew it wasn't going to be them because I really thought it was going to be Luton. But it ended up being Burnley against Man City. So that's a Friday night football, Cal. Good way to start the season. I think there's a lot of nostalgia about that with Company and Man City.
Sky always like a storyline, don't they? Like, so they had to pick something there. Luton, Liverpool seemed to be the popular one, but as I said, both of them teams requested the first game be away from home. So I think Burnley, Man City is a good way to start it off. City after winning the treble, kicking the season off again, and then Burnley the way they're playing now, did they get 100 points or was it less than that?
Nah, it's going to be interesting with Burnley because obviously, well, anyone who doesn't watch the Championship or doesn't watch, I actually watch quite a bit of it. Burnley are going to be like a different type of Burnley that we've seen over the last few years. They play a lot more football. They've kind of went away from the long ball that was working so well for them under Sean Dyche and previous managers. So do you expect Burnley to stick to that kind of style of play this season?
It's a $1,000,000 question. I don't know. I think Company will be stubborn. I think he will stick to it, to be fair to him. But if it gets to the tail end of the season and there looks like they could go down, you have to just do what needs must at the end of it. But no, I think Company's positive. He plays attractive football, so I think Burnley will they'll stick to it.
So I know what you're saying. I think he will stick to it. But as you say, if it gets to the end of the season and Burnley are struggling, is it a case of phoning Big Sam and getting them off a cruise again and give them 5 million to try and keep you up?
Well, we've seen the owners in the Premier League are ruthless, like, so you couldn't rule anything out now.
That surprised me quite a bit last year that so many managers was sacked towards the very end where teams just panicked. And like Dean Smith, he was sacked from Norwich, got a phone call from Leicester. Big Sam, he's been out of work since relegating West Brom, got a phone call. It just seemed to be desperation tactics. Does that just kind of show you the money involved in the Premier League that it sort of
Uh,
in a blink of a moment, chairmans, owners will make a split decision without much thought?
I was just going to say it's 100%. It's just all financial. It's worth so much to them, and I think on the flip side out there, I remember Carragher saying it. You have to give credit. They Forest last year, so a couple of times they could have sacked Steve Cooper, and they ended up keeping them up. Like, so, I think most teams could probably take a lesson off Forest. I think sticking with your managers could be the way to go instead of getting Big Sam on for 4 games.
Oh, there's Mickey Mac commenting. Happy birthday, Mickey, by the way.
My
I
birthday.
think he was 40 yesterday, he says to me he was. So happy 40th, Mickey. Um, Thanks you're working for Ferrari. Obviously, we don't support
Yeah.
any F1 brands on this show, so that wouldn't be allowed. But let's move on to Saturday. So blockbuster Saturday, 12:30 kickoffs. Arsenal against a team who actually ironically stuck with their manager despite a lot of rumours that he could be sacked, and that was Steve Cooper. And in the end, he secured Forest's safety with a win against Arsenal. So Arsenal Forest. I'll tell you what, I think this is a nice start for Arsenal. I don't know what you think.
I think so. I wouldn't be. I would say Arsenal's probably one of the main contenders again next season. I know obviously City's favourites as they always are, but like Arsenal, they play a sustainable brand of football, attractive brand of football, and we'll probably talk about later transfers and stuff. They look like they're going to strengthen again, so
Yeah,
I wouldn't be worried if it was an Arsenal fan. I think they'll be right up again next season. I know Champions League and all there as well, but I know I think it's a handy enough start at home against Forest. Like,
we're going to come on and talk about Arsenal, but more in depth as well as amongst a few other teams. Just quickly on Forest. Rumours that Brighton looking at Brennan Johnson, obviously Gibbs White as well was rumoured to get an England call up, but didn't come. Them two were probably the main reason that they stayed up, and obviously Steve Cooper as well. He had a big job in his hand managing all them players. And a lot of people criticize Graham Potter at Chelsea for not handling a squad of players. A huge squad of players. Cooper seemed to do that quite well at Forest. Do you think there's a chance Forest might sell one of them two? There's rumours they reject a 30 million bid from Brighton for Johnson, or do you think it's just they're too important they sell?
the far too important. I think more so your man Gibbs White. He looks phenomenal. Honestly, if I wouldn't be surprised if the top team picks him up. I think he's unbelievable. The
That
I'm
was
not
kind
saying
of a surprise last year because when they paid 45 million for him, a lot of people didn't
40
think.
million. I think it was.
So that'll be interesting to see what happens there. Right, the 3 o'clock game's just going to go through these quite quickly. Bournemouth playing West Ham, Brighton, Luton, Everton, Fulham, Sheffield United, Palace. Couple of stories on there. Obviously Bournemouth were probably them nailed on to go down last year. Everyone thought, especially after that Scott Parker interview. So Gary Neal done quite a good job to keep them in the league. West Ham. Again, didn't have the greatest league season, but broke their European wit and any kind of wit for a trophy. I think it was their first trophy in 43 years with that big one against Fiorentina. Just quickly on them two, Callum. Bournemouth, did they surprise you last year?
100%. I had them nailed on last. I was them and Forest. I thought were 19th and 20th. So I like the job that Gary O'Neill done, unbelievable. Obviously it remains to be seen next season now again, but I have some job by Gary O'Neill to keep them up.
Yeah, and just quickly, West Ham. Look, a lot of West Ham fans are getting carried away, and there was obviously a lot of fans thinking after the Newcastle result last year, wasn't many games left. They're beat 5-1 at home that he should be sacked. He obviously now earns the stay the last year of his contract with West Ham. Do you think he deserves that year after winning the Europa Conference League?
He's credit in the bank now. Yeah, he gave Emmons the best night of their lives, so 100% they'll remember that night forever now, no matter what. So whatever happens now, they'll be thinking about what happened in Prague a few weeks
Do
ago.
you think West Ham will kick on this season, or do you think it's much more the same?
It's hard too because you don't forget now they're in Europa League because they won that Conference League, so they've had first night to play too on the squad they have. So I could see them struggling with Europa League.
Yep. Brighton against Luton. Again, Luton's probably everyone's sort of fairy tale story this season. Everyone's going to be sort of, especially at the start, everyone's looking to play Luton. Everyone's watching Luton mainly because of the stadium and stuff. That's received quite a lot of publicity. They're obviously they've requested a home game second, so they're going to play away first. They try and get that stand a bit more Premier League level. But that's not going to change much for me. It's still going to be very much a tight ground, and especially the first few teams that go there, Luton's going to be right up for it. So it's going to be quite difficult to go there for the likes of Man Cities that are used to playing in the best stadiums. That's not going to be a great place to play football on.
No, 100%. I think as you say, they'll have that probably first few home game bounce. I suppose the high of being in the Premier League, as you can call it. The fans will get them through the first couple of games, I think, but then they'll probably have a rough spell, I would see, during mid-season. But I haven't watched much of Luton last year, to be honest with you, so they could surprise me.
They play quite long ball, so that's going to be difficult. Everton, Fulham. Everton, again, survived with skin of your teeth. We're going to talk about them a bit more. Fulham, again, I think that's just your standard 3 o'clock kickoff. If you could ever look like a 3 o'clock kickoff, that's it. Sheffield United against Crystal Palace as well. Sheffield United back in the Premier League, a bit of a yo-yo team. And Palace, again, they were probably one of the few teams that did change their manager, and it worked out quite well. Big Roy Hodgson was back. And I think he's staying on, is he? There seems to be there's no real clarity there.
He'll die on the job. He can't stay away from football.
So we move on to our Saturday night football game, and that's Newcastle against Villa. Do you know what? I think this is other than the game on the Sunday. This is probably the pick of the Saturday games. I think Newcastle, Villa, two teams who have really they're for me the two teams outside of the sort of top sort of six, as they say, or the big six, who I think everyone will want to avoid playing. So, and do you know what? I think Villa could be the surprise package this year because Newcastle have Champions League, Villa have that Conference League, and I think they're going to play a lot of youth players in that. I know Emery does take game seriously, but I think they're going to bring in. They've brought in like Chamberlain. I think you might see him playing in that. I think they're going to have a right go at trying to finish in the top six. And for me, I think they could be the surprise package. How do you see that?
Well, Newcastle, the sky's the limit with Emmons. You seen the other night they were linked with Barella, Van der Milan. Don't know if that's going to go through or not for the price that they said, 50 million. But it's 100%. Villa, it's as you say with the Conference League, it's hard, hey, because you need a proper squad. Like with them teams who are outside the typical big six, as the saying goes for Newcastle, and they're in Europe. It's going to be a wild hard way with the squads they have there to get the numbers on because they'll struggle in the league as a result of it.
Yeah, 100%. I do think Newcastle will. They're going to have to bring in a lot of depth because you've seen even towards the end of the season last year they looked a wee bit leggy, and they got a couple of injuries and they didn't quite. Bruno looked quite off the ball towards the end, and they just about had enough in the bank. If you hadn't got going a bit earlier, it might have been a different story. But definitely one day watching the transfer market. We know they've got a lot of money to spend, and we're going to speak about sort of that kind of money later on. Moving on to Sunday, we've got Brentford against Spurs on the Super Sunday. Obviously, it'll be Ange Postecoglou's first competitive game with Brentford, who Spurs failed to beat last season in both games. But do you think, let's just talk about Brentford quickly here. Ivan Toney's going to be a huge match for them this season. I know they won their last two games of last season, but they played Spurs, who had nothing to play for, in Man City, who were kind of focused on the finals after they won the league. 20 league goals, was it? You can't, that's hard to replace. You're paying big money to get a striker. You can do that in the Premier League, like, so 100% he doesn't come back to January, and then they have to get match fit and stuff like that there, so they could be suffering by the time January comes around. Like, so we'll speak about Spurs a bit more later on as well. But just on that game, do you think that's a difficult start, or is it a game you'd expect they won?
Against Spurs, I think it's as we're going to be talking about Liverpool next, but I think they've probably got Spurs at a good time because of the new manager trying to settle a squad on and stuff like that there in a home game against Spurs. I think they got Spurs at a good time. Yeah,
moving on to half four on Sunday, we've got Chelsea against Sorry, my mistake. I must have misspelled that. Sorry, Chelsea against Liverpool. There we go. But again, everyone's looking at that game. That's probably the showpiece of the weekend. Top six, or they sort of define them as the big six, even though they didn't kind of finish in the top six last year. But they're still known as the big six. Funny enough, I actually seen Luton put up a post today on their Twitter about the big six.
I've seen that,
and Newcastle have an issue with it, but that's just kind of how people view it. Obviously, if Newcastle were to continue finishing in the top four, that would change. But Chelsea, Liverpool, Mauricio Pochettino's first game. And we were kind of speaking about this today, and we were kind of going back and forth on it. But I think it's going to be very much a new look Liverpool team as well. So is this one of them games where you'll not really know until sort of the week leading up to the season how this game's possibly going to go?
Actually, can't really read too much on the preseason, like the way your playing friendlies, like. But I think again, as I said about the Spurs match, I think Liverpool potentially could get Chelsea at a good time. We all know they have quality, and it's going to take a while for them to sort that team out because they have so many players there. They're trying to let go of Havertz and getting rid of players and getting them players. So I think by the time the first week comes around, I'm not quite sure they'll be ready yet. And
Kieran Preston thinks it's going to be an easy 3 points, but I've heard him say that numerous times over the years.
I think you said about it's a new look Liverpool. I think you'll be a bit surprised, to be honest, because if you ask me to name the 11, I think our midfield's not going to be a lot different to what people would expect last year. Like, so it probably McAlister on that guy, but as we say, if we sign one or two more midfielders, like I can't really see the starting 11 changing much from what you would recognise as last season.
Liverpool, or just saying here, Liverpool with no Champions League football will play reserves in the Europa League, and that could benefit their top two chances. We're going to speak about that a bit more and later on in the show. We're just getting through these games quite quickly before we move on to the main topics. But I definitely agree with you. I think there's every possibility that Liverpool could use the fact they're not in the Champions League to their advantage this season. And as you say about playing the reserves, I don't know if they'll play the reserves, but I think they will make a lot of changes in the group stages. And as longer as it goes on, it's quite dangerous, Callum, as you move on to them sort of quarter-final stages and you aren't playing your strongest team, as United found out this year.
I think Justin's right. You'll play the younger fellas in the group stages, like, and just hope that you breeze through them there. And then once you get on the round of 32, is it still round of 32? I'm not sure. We haven't been on that long.
I think if you won your group, you go on the last 16. But if you finish second, you have to play a playoff, don't you?
So it's one and one. If you get on the last 16 quarterfinals, and then you start to properly think about it. And Klopp is the only trophy he hasn't won since he's been there, so I think you'll be taking it very seriously.
Yeah, and then the month of season finishes. If that would be a very quick season if it finished with Man United and Wolves, but the Monday night actually finishes off the weekend, and that's United against Wolves, and obviously that'll be quite a good watch because you'll have Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher probably making their season predictions. We'll probably do something like that somewhere closer to the time as well. But United Wolves, I think that's a good start for United as well. There seems to be a lot of sort of background noise at Wolves. Lopetegui's already starting to throw his toys out of the pram.
Big time. I don't know too much about Wolves, to be honest, but in terms of Man United, you'd expect them to stay comfortably won that there. I know they have the whole owner situation that's banging on too, but I'd be shocked if United didn't win that.
Yeah. Callum, we're going to just move on to the sort of main topics of the show. Within the next few weeks, we're going to look at teams as sort of first six and Christmas periods and maybe run-ons a wee bit more in depth, but there's just so much to talk about tonight. So we're going to bounce straight on. And we're going to talk about Man City. And the question we're going to ask is, are Man City unstoppable under Pep? Obviously, they won the treble. They up until they won the league, I think they won 14 games in the bounce, and then they took their foot off the pedal with them last two league games, and they rotated quite a bit. But there's no doubt in my mind, if they had won them two games, they more than likely would have. Is this just an unstoppable train and full throttle that just cannot be derailed, in your opinion?
I think so. I'll not sit on the fence. I'll say aye, because I think they have like the perfect storm. They probably, I know it's an hour debate for an hour time, but probably one of the best managers ever of all time. Like, and then you have the finances to back him whenever he wants. So, I mean, they're favourites every year until he leaves. Like, so 100%, I think they're unstoppable at the moment. It's going to take a very, very good team to beat them, as Liverpool fans know very well over the past 4 years.
Yeah, I think it's just over the 38 games. They always Pep seems to know how to manage their training regimes that well, that they always seem to click in that sort of February time, right through the end of the season, where they can almost win every single game. And even if they are maybe 6 or 7 points behind, the other teams can maybe lose 2 or 3, and then all of a sudden, once they get in front, they never seem to show any weakness. And I think almost when you're playing against that every week, as Arsenal found out a wee bit, it does just dampen your morale, and it just sucks the life out of you.
I know. I would say is that you're saying that when they stay ahead, but I think I seen like the stat that Man City were only officially first ranked for 14 days last season, so they were playing catch up for most of the year. I know the way the fixtures worked out, obviously like rescheduled games and stuff like that, but I think that was the 18-19 season. We forced them on the 114 in the bounce and the 98 points. They're just unstoppable at the minute, and under Pep, I can't really see much change, to be honest.
Yeah, a lot of people sort of would mention yourselves and this debate, and there used to be this kind of phrase thrown about years ago, and Chelsea have had this over the last few years of like a drop off season. Why do you
Mm.
think at Man City we haven't seen a drop off season? All right, you could say that one season they finished second to Liverpool, but they had De Bruyne injured that season, and I think Laporte at their time was their main centre
Uh,
back who was injured, and Liverpool had blitzed them in the first half. Like Liverpool hadn't lost the game until March, so it was more about Liverpool being good that season as well. Why do you think there's not been a massive drop off in any of the seasons? They always seem to won trophies, leagues. It's
I
doubles.
think
They've won a domestic treble and now the European treble.
well, number one, I'm not saying that no other team doesn't have this, but they do have a big squad. In my opinion, anyway, I know I have a Man City fan who probably argue against that, but my friend. But I think one of the key things for Pep, and it's being able to get rid of the player at the right time. You look at the likes of Sterling last year for 50 million, and you haven't really heard much since. He keeps being able to, and obviously you have to have the finances to be able to do that as well. That's why Liverpool know the likes, so they hold on. They kept it for 5 years. They don't really have the finances to go and know if a transfer doesn't work out. Whereas a Man City, if it doesn't really work out, they can have the ability they shift them on again. But I think he's a master of kind of spotting when a player might be on the decline, and he has the rotation every week. Because he never really plays the same 11. Like he always has like a different. He played a couple of systems for it last year as well, and then I got the change at the end of near the end of the season. We've seen John Stone step it onto my field and stuff like that there. So I don't know, he's a master.
Do you think you've had the nail in the head for me? Do you think that's why they are so hard to beat? That if they lose a game, for example, like they lost the Spurs, right, and then they changed their system, then they went. I think they had in that game they had Lewis like as an inverted
I mind
left
watching it
back
all.
or
Like,
right back. I don't think we've seen any of him really. Then after that game, he went with a Kanji. Walker's been on out of the team as he's just obviously he's got a lot of options there, but is he just so good at tinkering and changing his system around that it's very difficult to plan how they're going to play against you?
100%. So mine too. They played. Was it? I don't even know what it was last season. They played away to Chelsea, and they played Cancelo kind of like right wing nearly. He wasn't even a defender, and he had a terrible night. Like, but
I think that
uh,
was just before Christmas. Gary Neville criticised that, and I think then at half time, didn't he bring Mahrez on? And Mahrez actually scored the
and
winner
then
to
they
go
won them the
1-0.
game. So he's just tactically like no on the fly in game. He sees that so well, and he's not afraid. I think that's the big thing too, because as the criticism they Klopp, I think he's a bit stubborn times. Whereas Pep, he can just change it whenever he sees necessary. Like.
Yeah, you mentioned there about moving players on. He moved Sterling on, who's had quite a poor season. Jesus has been moved on, who I think he's good. He's a good player, but again, he's quite injury prone. He's seen that this year at Arsenal as well. He was injured. Zinchenko wanted more games. He moved him on. There's talk now of Walker being moved on. Bernardo Silva being moved on. And I think there was one more too. I'm not sure off the top of my head. There was
One.
Gundogan. Sorry,
Uh,
Gundogan being moved on. Who was instrumental in their sort of end. And he does that every year where he seems to come alive at the right time. So there's possibly an R3 being moved on. Would you be confident that even if M3 moved on, maybe three more come on, that it won't make any sort of difference to their dominance?
no, not really. I know I think their squad age now is getting as one of the highest in the league, and like the likes of Bernardo Silva, De Bruyne, Gundogan, all the ones you mentioned. They are getting a wee bit older, but the likes of City, they'll go and buy. I think you've seen rumours that they're going to try rival Arsenal for Declan Rice, so they're not afraid to buy him. They have depth there again, so it's just like a constant, it's like a conveyor belt. They just get one in and another one out.
Yeah, Kieran's saying here that they always seem to get a handy start. But sure,
You
Liverpool
have
fans
to
won't
play
say
everybody
that.
twice. It doesn't matter.
No, you have to play everyone twice, is right. But thanks for your comment, Kieran. I mean, if it was all the way around and somebody was telling him they had an easy start, I'm sure he would be fighting back against it. But the team that pushed Arsenal closest last season, that was Arsenal. And I guess this is maybe in a Spurs. But can't you believe they bottled it?
Um, bottles. It's a hard term, but I think if you look at I guess like last 10 games, it was see after the Anfield game where they drew two each. I think after that they weren't good enough. They were drawing games, losing games, and I think the worst one a lot was the free to Southampton. That was just they showed then that they were nervous that night, and after that there, I don't think they ever really had a chance. And I think mentally they were finished after that.
Where for you did it start to go wrong? Was it the Anfield draw where they were 2-0 up? Or was it the next game after when they were 2-0 up against West Ham and drew 2-2? Do you
I don't
think
even think.
the Liverpool results? Do you think the Liverpool game had an effect on the next game against West
It
Ham?
might have done because they dominated us for about the first half an hour, 40 minutes at Anfield. And I thought it could have been 3 or 4. I was thinking, here, dear God, we're on for a long day here. But even if he offered Arsenal that day a point at Anfield before they went on, they probably would have took it. So I don't think you can criticize him too much for how it went. But then the West Ham one, the Saka missing a penalty, you can just see Gary Neville called it from January onwards. He said the pressure is unbelievable on a team who's never done it before. It usually gets to them. Obviously, he thought Man City was going to win it, and so did I. But I think the West Ham match and the Southampton match, I think they were games that they should have won and they didn't, and that's where it went downhill from there.
Yeah, I do think the Liverpool one was a big one too because they were so good in that first half. It was painful to watch as a Spurs fan. I thought they were going to win that game 3 or 4-0. They conceded that goal right before half time, and Liverpool come out the second half, which they can do at Anfield, even when they're not at their best, and they put them under really pressure. And in the end, Ramsdale plus Salah missing a penalty. Liverpool could have won that game. And having said that, Arsenal had a breakaway at the end and could have nicked it. And for how good they were in some of them games, and they were brilliant in some of them games, there was at one point there was one point just after Christmas, and especially that Bournemouth game where Nelson scored that 97-minute winner, and you were kind of thinking, is this going to happen for them?
As a written for them.
So you think in the end they just maybe they had a few injuries as well. Saliba was injured, and obviously Jesus was out for a long time, and Partey seemed to lose form at the wrong time of the season. Do you think it was just a combination of things, pressure, injuries, and experience?
Pressure and experience probably the two main ones, to be honest. And then T2, they played nearly the same 11 the whole year. I know they got a couple injuries here and there, but they played near the same 11. So I think the squad depth is probably one of the main factors too. That obviously it helps playing the same 11 every week, but they didn't really have much out of that. Is my point. So I think it caught up to them near the end of the season then.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're looking quite like they're going to spend a bit of money, and we're going to talk about that later on. We'll move on. Callum, United. A lot of United fans seem to think that they're not as far away as some people think. Obviously, they had a really poor start to last season. We were actually over in Liverpool when they beat Brentford, or when Brentford beat United 4-0, and that was after losing to Brighton a week before, and people thought that maybe Ten Hag was out of his depth. This could be a baptism of fire, and it could all be over when they played Liverpool a week after. And they ended up beating Liverpool against all the odds, and they went from strength to strength there. Obviously, it wasn't perfect. They had some stumbling blocks. They lost the games that they lost quite heavily as well. Some of them. I can't remember anyone losing heavily as much as them in the top half of the table. So where do you see United at the moment, Callum? Obviously, they're going to try and sign players, but as it stands right now, how many players or how far do you think they are from Man City?
From Man City, they're miles off, in my opinion. I mean, they're not. I'm not saying they're not a great side. I mean, they're not a bad side, but you're talking. They need a striker. They need probably as a centre half they're after, and then David De Gea. I think he's too hit and miss. If you're looking for a title, you need a top goalkeeper, and David De Gea is not that goalkeeper anymore for me. Last season, if you said the United fans, if we take top 4 on a couple, they would have snapped their hand off it. So in that sense, it was a great season for them. But I wouldn't say that they're in the title challenge at all. I think Arsenal's far better than them, to be honest. And I think in terms of quality, I think Chelsea, once they get clicking, I think they have a better squad than them. So
yeah,
I think there's 2 teams ahead of them at the moment.
Do you think that one in the League Cup and the top, well, they finished third in the end? Do you think that was as good as they could really have hoped for? Obviously, they were beating the FA Cup final, and they ended up losing to the eventual winners Europa League. I think it was the quarterfinal stage against Sevilla when they really probably should have had that first leg over. Do you think that was a good enough season on Ten Hag's first season?
I'd say so. If you asked any fan of your first manager in his first season to get to 2 finals and top 4, I think anyone would take that. So it was 100%. It was a fantastic first season for them. But as you say, I don't know. I think there's cracks in the armor. Hey, there's too many fractions that they got last year. I know I was at the 7-0 at Anfield. I'll get that one in there, and the 4-0 and the who else bit them big as well. They had a few fractions on there which I would be concerned about. That's where their concern is for me, and they they lack goals up front. Obviously, Wakehorse was just a stopgap, and then Martial's never fit. So they need a striker if
Yeah.
they start off like so, and then they can go from there.
Funny you mentioned that 7-0 game. Liverpool, it was probably the highlight of their season, and that's who we're going to talk about next. Just as Owen Kelly arrives on there, die-hard Liverpool fan. You joined at a good time, Owen. We're talking about your beloved Liverpool here. So, question I'm going to ask you here, Callum, is Champions League a minimum required for Liverpool next season? If they weren't to finish in the top four, you know, is that acceptable to go 2 years in a row without Champions League football? Now, that I don't mean, that's just one man blame for that. I mean, as a club as a whole, would it be a travesty if they, it's all, you can see already, Liverpool fans are not happy with being in Europa League. If that was to happen again next season, there'd be a lot more questions being asked.
It's an absolute minimum. If it happens again next season, the owners are out in their ear. The fans won't accept that 2 years in a row. Absolutely no way. I know the manager end up getting stuck for that, but I know I could chat about it all day. I think it's a trickle down system, to be honest, from the owners. So if that was to happen again, absolutely no way would it be accepted. I think the owners would be they're getting the owners would be they getting chased out. I think, but I top four. I think we'll get top four next season, to be honest, because I think they realise now how badly they messed up that last transfer window. So 100% top four is minimum, and even a trophy if they can flank about one.
That's an early season prediction from Calmer. Danny Dorn claims he nutmegged the two of us. We must have been drunk or something, and we had a water bottle and water replace, because I never mind him doing that. But
I'm not sure.
Danny, good to see you watching. I'm still within that sandwich I give you here in Belfast. I still haven't got it back off you. But Liverpool, yeah, we're gonna talk about them a bit more later on. But it's a big season for them, Cal. And as you say, I don't think they can afford not to be in the top four. We're going to talk about them a wee bit more when it comes to transfers. Newcastle obviously broke on the top four last year against the odds. Nobody would have called that at the start of the season. They've obviously had an influx of cash, but as people see me, Man City, that take time. Do you think Newcastle took advantage of teams like Liverpool, Chelsea, and Spurs who underperformed, or do you think that they would have got on there anyway?
I'm not sure, because they just got on by the skin in their teeth. I think they were only finished a few points ahead of us when we were flying then. So I'll don't get me wrong, credit to Newcastle. I think the majority of that team was there before they started buying players too. So credit to Eddie Howe, the way he's coached them. I think they were an excellent watch for most of the season, like that first half before the World Cup. So there's always a few teams that struggle, and last year it was the three of us, the Spurs, Liverpool, and Chelsea. So fair play them, they took advantage, and now they can kick on now with the more financial freedom the Champions League gives you.
Yeah, funny enough, like them three teams, Liverpool, Chelsea, and Spurs, all finished in the top four the year before and all dropped out last year. Man City were the only team to sustain their position, and that's a question we're looking at. Will Newcastle sustain that position with the added Champions League? And they're going to have to spend a lot of money. I think they do that, Callum, because I do expect Liverpool, Chelsea, and even Spurs to be a lot stronger this season.
I think even if you asked any Newcastle fan, I don't think even the most biased fan would say I don't think they'll get top four next year, because as you say, the big boys rarely have 2 seasons off. They always usually bounce back whenever they have a bad season. So I would expect Newcastle. I know it's an hour prediction. I don't think they'll get too far. I don't think they'll get out of the groups. So that means they have no European football after December. I'm not quite sure. Even if they do progress, whatever, as I don't really foresee them getting top four. We everyone else strengthening them and getting Chelsea getting a new manager and stuff like that. So I think Newcastle fans will take probably top 7 if you give it them again.
Yeah. Obviously, there's 2 new managers coming into the league at the top end of the table, and that's Mauricio Pochettino, former Spurs manager, going to Chelsea, and former Celtic manager Ange Postecoglou, who may have surprised a few by landing the Tottenham job. Callum, in your opinion, who do you think of them two's got a bigger job in their hands?
Without question, Ange. Without question. The Spurs are an absolute disaster. I think Poch, we'll start with Chelsea first. I think Poch, he's lucky. He has I know he's a massive squad there, but he's a squad full of quality, where Ange can't really say the same. I hope for a league title, Kieran too, but
Is he going to win Ange league title at the minimum?
Maybe, I don't know.
It'd be hard to keep Spurs fans happy, but if he can win us a league title, I'll be happy with that.
I think
he's referring to Liverpool there, league title at minimum.
But with Chelsea, they have a team full of quality there, and Spurs is the complete opposite, and Spurs have. I know you could probably tell more about me, tell me more about it, but in terms of Levy and stuff, they're not happy with it more upstairs. But without doubt, Ange has a bigger struggle on his hands than Poch at the minute.
There's no doubt it's going to be difficult for the two of them, I think, because whatever you say about Chelsea as well, they're going through a very, very difficult period in terms of we're going to talk about transfers, but there's a lot of rumors that they're going to be selling players just to try and get money in. They go there for and buy players because they're short in certain positions, so that won't be easy. And also the fact that Poch is a former Spurs manager as well. If Liverpool were to beat them on the first day and they weren't to get off to a good start, he'll have that tag to shake off at the start. But I do agree with you. I think Ange has got a bigger job because, whatever you say about Chelsea, he will get money to spend. Pochettino, he will get to buy players that he wants.
Yeah.
You only have to look at the news. They look at Spurs, the way they're trying to do business at the minute. And we'll talk about some of the transfers again. But Ange, Callum, did you watch much Celtic last year?
I'm not gonna lie, I would only watch an old firm or two, so I can't really comment too much on it, to be honest. But from the few matches that I did watch, he played good football, Celtic. But the big question is, I know I don't want to disrespect a few Celtic fans here, but I think the Premier League's a few levels up from Scotland. So the question is, can he transfer that to a team like Spurs?
Nah. Well, if any Celtic fans want your name, address, and contact details, I'll let them know. All right, I don't want to do you any damage, but no. As I said, a lot of Celtic fans have been in touch with me, and they've been saying, how much they rate Ange and how disappointed they are to go. He has to go, so it'll be interesting to see how he fares, and we'll talk about a wee bit more later on. And obviously, because he's left Celtic, there's a vacant manager's role at Celtic, and the rumor is that it's very close to being completed. That Brendan Rodgers is going to be the new Celtic manager. And that'll be the second time he's been there. But Callum, do you think this is just a convenience for both at the moment? Because Celtic need a manager. Obviously, they want a good manager after Ange has left. I know Rodgers done a great job, but there seemed to be a real connection between Ange and the fans. Rodgers, you think, will be a safe bet because of what he did there previous. But the way he left a sour taste in a lot of Celtic fans' mouths that he just walked out. It wasn't even mid-season. It was towards the back end of the season. They joined Leicester. What's to say this won't happen again?
I think you've had the name in the head. I think it is just a bit of a convenience. It's if a Premier League team comes calling, the managers usually do go. That's just kind of the way that it goes, unfortunately, for Celtic. I'm not too sure. I think Rodgers would be happy enough to go back there. Obviously, I know he is close now, but. And he's good enough to win them trophies again. But I can't really add much more to what you said, to be honest. I think it is just a bit of a convenience for both parties. So.
Yeah. Tell me this, right? If Rodgers goes there and wins the treble next season, and halfway through next season, a team in the Premier League comes on for him, do you think he won't hesitate?
It depends who it is, to be honest, but he would definitely think about it. If that's what you're asking me, he's done it before, so
right. Let's just put it this way: let's say Emery and Villa had a shocker, and they sacked Emery, and they go to Celtic, or they go to Rodgers and say, "We want you to come on and manage Villa." Do you think he goes right away?
Unfortunately, I think he does. I think he does. That's just kind of the way the hierarchy goes in terms of the Premier League and Scottish football. Unfortunately, no, 100%. I think if the likes of Villa were to come on, I think he would find it very hard to turn it down.
I actually joked to you about a manager going back to Scotland there last week. And I wasn't serious when I said the name Steven Gerrard, but he definitely won't be going back to Scotland because he's on his way to Saudi Arabia apparently. Callum, what do you make of this? There's been a lot of talk around this. Liverpool legend. He was touted as being the next Liverpool manager after Klopp, or whenever Klopp wanted to go. He done well at Rangers. Then he went to Villa, had a disaster. They were in a relegation battle, and then Emery comes on and gets them on to Europe, and they had arguably as good as form as anyone in that second half of the season. They went as you've seen, they made it very difficult for Liverpool towards the end when their top four hopes were ended. Do you think is Gerrard really stuck for options here, or do you think he sees it as a big payday?
Both. I love Gerrard. He's my childhood hero. I grew up watching him, but I think the brutal honesty is that I don't think he's a top manager, and I think the like the clubs in terms of no hiring Lampard and hiring Gerrard. I think they just get him because of their playing career, which I think is completely wrong. And both times they've been shown that it doesn't really work out usually. So look, he's a way to get a bucket load of money, but I don't think too many teams from Europe will be coming knocking for him for a long time yet. I think he has a lot to learn as a manager.
I'm struggling with this one because like it doesn't say much about his character, does it? Because I do
No.
think he could get a job in England, maybe not in the Premier League, but in the Championship
Ah,
somewhere. Do you think he thinks he's too good for the Championship because he's been at Rangers, because he's been at Villa, and he's kind of like, do you know what, I'm going to go and get a big payday out there because he couldn't be going there for the standard of the football.
no.
And the other thing as well, when I look at it, is if he was to won the league out there for a Saudi Arabian football team, does that give him any credit in the bank for when if a European team was looking for a manager? Would they look at that as well, he's done well in Saudi Arabia?
Not really, because the only winner out of this whole situation is Gerrard's bank account, to be honest. Because as you say, if he goes and wins the league, it doesn't really mean anything because them clubs have unlimited money and the standards not that great. I know they're shipping all these bigger names out now who are at the end of their career and whatnot, but they try to build credibility in the league now. But it's just another form of sports watching, like, so I'm disappointed that Gerrard's kind of fed on that. But I it's I don't really see much of it, to be honest. Like, he probably should have went to a championship team if he was really serious about managing. But I think him taking this job shows that he's not overly serious about managing, or else he would have got a job in England, as you say.
And there the likes of Meats there. He's a big Liverpool fan, big Steven Gerrard fan. I remember him one day telling me he would love to see Gerrard at Liverpool. Do you think that ship sailed now? You could never be a Liverpool manager, or do you
Well,
think?
as a manager years, he's very young, like, so you never know. He could come back when he's in his 50s or 60s. You never know. He could be a completely different manager, but as it stands, he's absolutely nowhere near Liverpool, never mind Premier League level.
And on the Saudi part there's obviously been a lot of talk this week about Saudi Arabia. We've seen Benzema go out there. There's rumours of Kante going out there. Gerrard's on his way out there. They're Newcastle are owned by Saudi Arabians. We've also now got the Man United owner now coming on as well from the Middle East. That looks like it's going to be done very shortly. Is this just the way football's going, Callum? It's just getting out of hand with money.
It's whoever has the biggest pockets is going to win one long term, unfortunately. Which is frustrating as a Liverpool fan, especially because it's their FSG is kind of the opposite. They want to try punch everybody down with wage caps and stuff like that. So lucky you'll see it now again with Newcastle. They're going to be right up there. They're going to be serious. It's just the way football is now, and that's the way it is. You can't really complain about it.
Yeah. Right, Cal. Moving on to transfer talk here. There's been so much of it. We're going to talk about this for the last 15 minutes of the show. Can't believe we've been on for 45 minutes already. But a lot of stuff in the news. It's I think because the season finished late, everything seems to be just really rattling out now. Because usually when the season finishes, we say mid-May, there can be a month where nothing really happens. Everything seems to be happening right now. We've seen some big moves already being done, and one of them was McAlister. So, not a lot of money involved here in terms of what we're seeing our players go for. Obviously, 35 million is quite a lot of money, but in terms of football money, this seems like a really, really good deal for Liverpool. Do you think already this could be the best signing in terms of value money all summer?
It has all the hallmarks, to be honest. He's proven Premier League quality, World Cup winner. He's only 24, I think it is, or whatever. So he looks a really proven quality player. I think like at the start, whenever we were linking him, there was rumours 60, 70, 80 million. Which if you paid that, then I don't know. I don't think he was worth it. I think we got him for under his market value, to be honest, which was a good deal for us. But no, I think he's the making of probably the signing in the summer especially how much we bought him, like 35 million. So
yeah, well, I think in the end that there was a reason it was 35 million, because we know Brighton are very good at negotiating fees. There was a release clause on there. So Brighton's hands were tied, and that was why Liverpool were able to get him so cheap, because I do think they would have been looking at 50 at least for him. Where they would have went, there's another question, because a player who we all know they were chasing for a long time, I think
don't do
Klopp
it to
spoke
me.
about him before. A lot of Liverpool fans told me, "Oh, he's coming next year," and it's the songs were being done about "Hey Jude," and in the end, we seen him standing today in front of Real Madrid fans and saying them famous words, "Hala Madrid." So, Callum, British record fee for Jude Bellingham. It's rumored to be 90 million up front with possibly 25 million in add-ons, which would give it a combined fee of 115 million. Do you think Liverpool walked away because of the finances involved, or was Bellingham's heart set on Madrid? Because he did say today that he watched the final last year and that and his head Madrid are the best, or do you just think that's something he's saying now because he's signed for Real Madrid?
A bit of both. I mean, all year. I mean, well, in terms of Liverpool perspective, first off, we before McAlister, our last midfield signing was Thiago in the summer of 2020. So we've been fed by Liverpool journalists now for 3 years that the reason we weren't signing any midfielders was because we were essentially building up a kitty for Jude Bellingham because we knew he was always going to be expensive and we knew how much wages he was going to take and all that there and the rest of it. So and then he pulled out around April. Obviously, that must be when he made his decision to go to Madrid. But from Liverpool's perspective, really, really frustrating because we've suffered now off the back of it. We suffered now off the back of it, and look, there's rumours that apparently Real Madrid, who's his dad's his agent, apparently he got 30 million as a sign on fee or whatever. So mental money involved. It's just frustrating again, as I say, from Liverpool that they essentially saved up and then they pulled away. So now we have to buy 3 or 4 midfielders or whatever.
Do you think, even though that it's 115 million, that this was a player worth spending that kind of money on? Because I know Liverpool fans did they rated him quite highly. I know he's only 19, but if it was your money, let's just say, would you have went the extra distance and matched Madrid's offer? If he said to you, "Look, I would prefer Liverpool," would you have matched Real Madrid? And maybe lost a player somewhere else just to get him on?
Well, depends who that player is, but there's a lot of credible Liverpool journalists like Paul Joyce coming out and saying that behind the scenes he wanted to go to Liverpool, he wanted to go to a team with tradition, which obviously Madrid is, but um, it's hard. I would have bought him anyway. I think he is that good. He's not the finest article. You have to forget he's only 19, like, but no, he's going to be a top player for years to come. I think we really missed out on one there, not getting him. Like,
do you think he'll be successful at Real Madrid? Do you think he could be, he'll win? Obviously, you expect him to win the old Spanish league anyway, but do you think he could be a player that almost like Zidane? He's took his number 5 there. He could be the difference in the big games in the Champions League final, for example.
100%. He's a final four player. He affects games at the other end of the pitch. So I can't not see it. I know the likes of Kroos and Madrid, they got an extra year there now in their contracts. They'll be phased out eventually, but that midfield that they have fantastic, and I can't not see him being the main part of that actually for the next 5 years and longer. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, you've got Cruz, Modric, Bellingham, Camavinga, Tuchemi, Valverde. So that's very, very strong. I know Camavinga and Valverde can play out wide or in the fullback areas too, but as Modric proved last night, he's still a world-class player. But in the big games against Man City, for me last year, Man City were very unlucky against Madrid. I think things didn't go their way. But do you think that because they were so overrun on the field that when it comes to the big games next year, you'll see maybe Modric playing with 2 of these players instead of having Modric and Cruz together?
I will be shocked if they didn't, to be honest, because they got steamrolled at the Etihad. Like, I don't. It was, when do you ever see Madrid concede 4 away from home in the Champions League semi-final? Like, they usually bossed games, and they couldn't really even get the likes of Modric and Kroos on the ball for long, and they look leggy. They looked old. I know they're still quality players, don't get me wrong, but they need the likes of Bellingham and Tchouaméni probably on and then one of Kroos or Madrid in.
Yeah, and obviously this transfer's gone through quite early. The transfer window only officially opened yesterday, and that transfer was announced. He was put in front for his presentation today. So because it's so early in the window and he's went for a British record transfer fee, has that now just added money? Because we're going to talk about some of the other players being linked, but there's always a transfer every summer sets the sort of fee for different players. And do you think because he's went for that kind of money that all of a sudden teams now trying to buy players are going to find there's an extra 10 million or 15 million put in front of the price tag?
I would actually say there was another transfer that was it in January they got it done. Enzo that set the standard, to be honest, because I don't think he was. Don't get me wrong, I think Enzo was a quality player for Chelsea, but I think he actually set the standard because if you're Dortmund and you're Bellingham, you're going, is there much of a difference between Bellingham and your man Enzo Fernandez? So I actually think that Chelsea kind of like Chelsea single handedly have kind of inflated the market, but now and Bellingham's kind of followed on from it. But he's a top player anyway, so he's always going to go for that much.
Yeah. Owen's a Liverpool fan here. He's put a wee comment on the screen there saying that we Liverpool fans always get fed the same stuff every year, but when it comes down to spending the money, we always seem to find a way to pull out. So, Callum, this next wee part here, I'm gonna ask you this here wee question. Do you think that Liverpool are selling themselves short in the transfer market? We've talked about getting back into the top four, but we've seen this week a lot of big names being linked, but not with Liverpool. We've seen Rice, the Arsenal. We've seen Caicedo, the United, Chelsea, Arsenal. Why do you think Liverpool aren't in a conversation for these type of players anymore? We've seen them linked with Thuram and Kone, who could be good players in the future, but for Liverpool, this hasn't, with respect to our teams, they're not a Newcastle or even a Spurs. They're expected to be fighting for leagues every year. Why are they not being linked with these kind of names?
I think it comes down to the owners, to be honest. It's I know it's a boring answer, but it just does, Gareth, honestly, because as I said earlier on about the Bellingham, we were fed for 3 years that we were saving up money for Bellingham, and that's why we didn't have any midfielders signed, and then we pulled out of Bellingham, and now we have to sign probably 3, I'd say, now in the summer. So I think it's honestly, as a Liverpool fan, it's ridiculous that we're not being linked with the likes of Caicedo. He's like favourite to go to Chelsea now, and I think the fee that they're talking about is 80 million. I know it is a lot of money, but I don't think for Liverpool it should be out of the realms. Like, do you know what I mean? So it's wild frustrating. Like, and I'm not. It's what we've been used to under Klopp. It's what they're relying on Klopp. They get young players in them and develop them, but I think we've outgrown that now. We have world class players there, and we should be adding quality on top of that at this stage now.
I remember Arsenal fans it kind of went the same a few years ago with them, where Wenger kind of produced miracles to get them into the top four, and eventually, when they weren't buying enough top players, all our teams around them improved. And do you think that's a big worry for Liverpool? If Chelsea were to get Caicedo, Arsenal were to get Rice, Real Madrid have got Bellingham, what chance would Liverpool have in the Champions League against teams with that kind of depth and that kind of quality in their team? As good as a coach's Klopp is, at the end of the day, you still need the top players because they produce at the big moments.
I know, and I know there's probably some Liverpool fans who, like, if they were watching, they would turn around and say, "Oh well, the likes of Wijnaldum and whoever else we signed throughout the years weren't big names whenever they came in." But I think the point that you just made is, I think we're kind of past that now. We should be able to. We're big enough. We're Liverpool. Like, we're probably we're the top 3 biggest clubs in the world, in my opinion. We should be able to get the likes of Caicedo, and I don't think it's unreasonable. I know they're saying that McAlister he turned down teams who are in the Champions League. They come to Liverpool, so we still have the pull there to get players, like. But I think it's down to the owners. They don't want to finance the big deals.
The McAlister one's an interesting one because if Brighton say wanted 60 million from him, I don't think Liverpool sign him.
No,
I really do think they signed him because of the finances involved.
Aye.
Not saying he's not a good player, and I do think he will improve Liverpool, but I do think a lot of it was down to because he was able to get him on the cheap, considering that all our teams are spending maybe 3 times that, the same players.
100%.
If Liverpool, the rumour is, Cam, and we've spoke about this quite a lot, that Thuram's the next on the list. And, they're talking, what's the finances involved here? Is it another 40 million job?
They're trying to get the fee around 40 million or less.
So if they're getting McAlister and Thuram for the same prices that Caicedo would cost, they obviously view that as better. But sometimes, as a Spurs fan, I've seen us go down that road sometimes, and it doesn't always lead to success because you're trying to shop in Sainsbury's instead of maybe shopping at the top supermarkets. You know what I mean? It doesn't really work. So it'll be interesting to see if it works. But the one thing I would say is Klopp has done this before, and he's really, really good at improving players. Also made the news this morning, Kel, that West Ham rejected a 90 million bid from Arsenal for Declan Rice, and is he worth any more than that in your opinion? But 80 million plus 10 million add-ons. The fee that's being talked about now is that West Ham want 120 all on, so they reckon that will be maybe 100 up front and 20 in add-ons. Now, from what I've been told, Arsenal offered that money over 4 seasons. Now, West Ham want the money over 2 seasons. So, again, there's quite a lot they sort out for this deal to be completed. And I do think this is going to go on quite a bit because when there's that much money involved, this is probably going to ramble on. But I do think eventually it will end up at Arsenal. It looks like it's nailed on. It's Arsenal. If he goes for like 100 million, say, Callum, have Arsenal been done over there? I know you're a big fan of Rice, but is he worth that kind of money?
I personally think he is. I know me and you've been chatting about him for a few years now. I'm not really sure where you stand now at the moment in terms of the finances involved, but no, I think Rice is a top player. That's the thing with transfers. He's worth 120 million to West Ham, so they're going to ask for it, and he's the heartbeat of their team. I think he's a quality player, and it looks nailed on. They go to Arsenal now. I'm jealous, to be honest. I think he would suit our team just as much. He would improve us immediately.
See, that's the thing, Callum, right? You've got Bellingham, who's went to Real Madrid, and it was quite clear before the season even ended, Liverpool were not in the race for him. Caicedo, there was talk of him going to Liverpool in January, not in the race anymore. Declan Rice, a player that would definitely improve Liverpool, ain't on the race at all. So that's what we're kind of speaking about. Like, it's worrying that not even one of these names that Liverpool are even, it's almost like they believe these players are out of their reach. And surely, as Owen mentioned here about the owners, FSG, is this a big worry now for you that, if next season wasn't doing well, that we talked about top 4 being a minimum, do you think more criticism will come on the owners than it will the manager?
I think you'll see Carragher talking about FSG a lot more this year if it doesn't go well. It is on Monday Night Football and the likes of that there. We'll talk about Nunes in a minute if we want, but look, it is an FSG problem. You look, I know people's probably fed up here. And if you look at the net spend, the comparison to like United, even Arsenal now, Man City. I know people always kind of beeline to Man City about how much they spent, but I like say Arsenal. There's even teams like I know our neighbours, Everton, they spent far more than us. I mean, Villa spent far more than us. West Ham spent more than us. There's plenty of teams who aren't even anywhere near the top 4 who spent more money than us. It's just they act like they're like a bottom half team at times, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, and Kieran saying here about Nunes 85 million. Do you think is that in the back of our heads now? They spent that kind of money on a player and it hasn't gone well. Like we're talking about Keita too. I think he was around 55, 60 million. Was injured quite a lot. But should that enter your head if a top player comes on the market, do you have to just set everything aside and go, if we really want them, this is how much it's going to cost us, and we just have to gamble on it?
Well, the thing is, Klopp always says that. He says it nearly every time he's asked about transfers. He's all, if the right player is available on the market, we'll go and get him. It doesn't matter about how much he costs. But as the evidence shows now, that's lies at the minute. Like they're looking at under 21 players who are all going to under 21 euros now next week. So I don't think the words add up to the actions. And as I said earlier on, with Man City in comparison to Liverpool can't afford to get it wrong. That's why they're looking at like Nunes. I know he's a long-term project, but like, say if he didn't turn out well, and if he was at City, they would be able to ship him out, whereas we're not.
Yeah. Kieran saying here about Rice being overhyped. I have a funny feeling if he was playing for Liverpool, he'd be running around saying next Stevie. You know what I mean? So it's just the way fans are. But look, we're going to move on to another big transfer story at the moment, and it's come out of nowhere really, and it's Arsenal and Chelsea are apparently close to reaching an agreement for Kai Havertz. Now, he went there with a big reputation at Chelsea. I think it cost somewhere between 80 and 85 million to get him in as well. He was brilliant in that under-21 tournament for Germany. He broke into the international side, looked very, very good. Bayer Leverkusen, he was a big success. And it's not really worked out at Chelsea. Now, maybe that's due to a lot of managers changing over different systems, him being played as a false nine. Maybe it doesn't suit him. But are you surprised that Arsenal are looking at Havertz in terms of them? Again, we're hearing the money involved here could be 60 million. So again, I know he was worth, he went for 85 a few years ago, but 60 million is still a lot of money for a player that's not really performed for Chelsea, bar that Champions League goal. I can't remember too many big moments he was been involved in over the last few years.
100%. Look, I know people probably, when they first read that headline, they're probably laughing, oh, why is he going there? Why are they interested in him? But I actually think he's a good player, and he's been, as you say, he's been chopped and changed in those different managers over the years, and they've played systems, that wing-back system where it's kind of not the most attractive type of football and stuff like that there. So I think under under Arteta and Arsenal. I think they play a far better brand of football that would suit him down the middle on the false nine. I think Arteta probably sees him as a Firmino type, that where he kind of links play and on the half turn and the half space and stuff like that there. So no, I think if they do get it done for less than the 60 million that's been reported, I actually think it's a good deal. There's a player.
I'm not sure. I don't think he suits their style of play. Arsenal are very similar to what Liverpool were, I think, where they press from the front. I don't really see that on him. I don't like Firmino was a hard worker. I know they had very similar on the ball.
He is a bit lazy. Like.
Average side, it almost seems like it's an effort to get him to run sometimes. That's the one thing that'll have to improve if it goes to Arsenal. But it looks like this deal could be done before the Rice deal. So, do you think they've just seen an opportunity here that Chelsea are trying to get rid of players? They feel they can get Havertz for maybe, 30 million less than what it would be worth to Chelsea, if they weren't in this mess?
100%, because Chelsea, I think the thing is Chelsea have to start selling players before the end of June or something like that there, because it stays on like this year's books. So they're having a bit of a fire sale. So that's, I think, is exactly that. They're kind of just they spot an opportunity, and well, he's going to get big money too. They're talking he's over 200 grand a week, so it's not light money either. Like I don't know. It could be. They don't. I hope our Arsenal fans are probably thinking, I hope it's not like an Aubameyang situation where they get a player on big wages and they kind of flops, whatever. But
Arsenal don't have a great record of going to Chelsea for players. That's what I can tell you. Mate's just still going on about Liverpool here. He says FSG ain't a problem. What the rest one that we haven't? Bar City. Kieran, is there anybody at Chelsea fancy? I think they're going cheap. What about you, Callum? Anybody at Chelsea that you would look at and maybe on a cut price fee?
At Chelsea?
Kovacic, maybe? You're looking for a midfielder? Would he be interested?
He looks nailed on to go to City now. They're after him.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Reece James back up for Trent, maybe?
We're going to move on to comedy hour now. There was a story I broke today, and comedy hour actually involves Spurs as usual. But Leicester reject 15 million bid from Spurs for Maddison and Barnes. When I seen this, I was reading going 15. I saw there, before I even got there, I just seen Maddison, and then I read it back and I seen the Barnes thing, and I just laughed. And now it's rumored that Newcastle and Spurs are the two teams most likely to land Maddison. Now I've heard that Maddison's agents are tied on with Ange Postecoglou's agents, and that the player does, possibly want to move to Spurs to stay in London, or they move to London. And also I think as well, Spurs, I think he's guaranteed to play. I think that's how far we fall on it. I don't think he's a cert to play for Newcastle, especially the talk of Barella going on to Newcastle as well. But Callum, has Daniel Levy learned any lessons here at all? There's a chance that this could really, really piss Leicester off, and they might just say, we're not doing any business we know.
100%. Levy's kind of reminded me like FSG here. He's trying to get a 2-for-1 deal. To be honest, Maddison himself probably were 50 or 60. I know they've went down now, so the fees are probably a bit more cheaper. There might be a release clause on there that we don't know about. That's maybe why he's put on the. Maybe there's release clauses on there that we don't know about. Maybe that's why they've bid the 50 million. We don't know what goes on in the contracts, but as you say, they've probably laughed at that there, to be honest. It's more than have they seen that coming.
Where do you expect Maddison to end up then?
It's between Newcastle and Spurs. So I think the most I've had to put a bet on it now. I'll probably do Newcastle because they're the more likely to actually pay the money from than Spurs.
Spurs will offer them 5 million plus Harry Winks, maybe.
They might not pay his wages either, whatever he wants. So I would, if you had asked me to put a bet on it now, I would back Newcastle to game over Spurs.
I actually think Maddison will end up at Spurs. I just have a feeling. I've said that from the start of the back end of last season. I just think it's going to be a sign that'll happen. For how much money, I don't know. I think Spurs will probably chuck on a couple of kebabs there, maybe the owners, anything to get them over the line. But before we move on, we're going to speak for a couple minutes about Ireland's game tomorrow night against Greece, because it's obviously a big game for them. We'll talk about the two Harrys. We'll start off with Maguire. A lot of talk about how much United he has to move. Has to go somewhere to try and revitalize his career, because he's struggled and he's carrying that 85 million price tag around him every time he takes the football pitch. Do you see there's any way he's at United come the 1st of September next, or at the end of the transfer window?
Well, if Ten Hag gets his way, absolutely no chance. They're looking at another, I think the Korean boy in Napoli, your man Kim Min Jae or something like that there. I'm not sure if that's his name, but I honestly, Maguire, I think he's finished at Man United, but it's just a question of who wants to pay the money for him. To be honest, well from day one, I never really thought he was good enough to go to Man United, and then the 85 million was a bit of a cloud that hung over him, as you say, his whole career now. So look, I could see him actually going down to a lower team in the Premier League, and he suits that style. I remember at Leicester, the way they sat deep and he was just kind of heading balls out. That's what I done, but I think if United get their way, he'll be out to the worst.
Yeah, I won't say anything. He doesn't think Madison's as good as what people think. I think he's hot and cold one, but I think under the right manager, he could definitely improve. And he's decent from set pieces too. And Spurs really struggled. I know Kane scored that sort of set. It was almost like a free kick, but I can't remember the last free kick they scored before that. So he'll definitely give Spurs something different, and they really need creativity. So no, I definitely think it would improve Spurs. And much like Maguire, he's obviously been linked with Spurs as well. I really don't think that'll happen because I don't really see him being an Ange Postecoglou player. I think Maguire, I think you could see him moving abroad. I really do. I think maybe you see what happened with Chris Smalling, and I could see him maybe going there. I think the worrying thing that if you're an England fan, I can't imagine too many England fans watching this, but if you were an England fan, the Southgate seemed to really like him. So I think if he's playing anywhere, he'll probably get picked.
No, I think the foreign leagues. No, I don't know if you say with Chris Smalling, maybe Spain or even Germany. I think you probably suit them leagues better. It's a bit more slower pace. So I wouldn't be shocked if as you say, if he went abroad. To be honest.
Yeah, and the story that's always dominates Sky Sports News all summer, they try to flog him as much as they can, but he's still here in North London. We're going to talk about Harry Kane before we finish up here. Callum, where does his future lie? We'll talk about his immediate future and then maybe possibly his future in a year's time. And in your opinion, where does he rank amongst the great Prem strikers? So we'll start off with his immediate future. Do you see him here at Spurs come 1st of September?
I've been chatting away to you about it, but I thought maybe Madrid, maybe Man United, but there's been reports that Man United just don't have the money for him. So I think that almost nearly secures him a Spurs for his last season. And they probably go next year on a free. Because he wants that Premier League goal record. He wants to be cheer, I would imagine. So I would be shocked now if he wasn't actually a Spurs player now at the first game.
There was at one point I never thought United would pay the kind of money Spurs wanted, and I thought that the other possibility if he wanted to move there was Real Madrid. But that looks now gone as well because it looks like Mbappe is going to be lined up there next year as well. So it looks Neil Loney's going to be a Spurs player this season. It's funny, like there's Levy trying to get 2 players for 50 million, but he wouldn't sell Harry Kane's left boot for anything less than probably 100, 120. So, he is that important to Spurs. I do think Spurs are going to roll the dice here. Do you think if Spurs were to do well next year, Callum, I don't mean, won the league here. I mean, if they were to get back into the top 4, maybe even against all the odds, maybe pick up a domestic trophy, do you think it will be enough to keep Kane? Or do you think, regardless of what happens, he's going to want to make a move because he wants to win the Premier League or Champions League?
I actually think he probably would end up staying at Spurs. He's Spurs and he's hurt them, but I think most of it too would rely on the other teams. The likes of what they call it, Madrid. If they get Mbappe next year, that's rolled out, and then Haaland at City. There's very, very few teams are looking for him. So you have Madrid. He'll probably have Mbappe next year, as I said. Haaland to Man City, Man United. If they get over way back at Qatar, maybe next season, the start of next season. But no, I think he is Spurs in his heart. So if he gets shocked almost about Spurs being good next year, then I think you could see him finishing his career at Spurs and end up.
I think there's a good chance he ends up in Manchester next year. To be honest, especially with United getting took over. It'll be interesting to see what kind of striker United sign because they will have to sign someone. Do they go all out for a top striker or do they try an hour stopgap? That'll be interesting if you see an hour stopgap striker going on there. The writing's probably on the wall. But I wouldn't rule out Man City taking him on a free transfer because that's That's the one place I can see Kane being guaranteed to win. I don't mean the domestic trophy. I mean like a Premier League or a Champions League. That's the one place. Do you think that he needs to win a Premier League or a Champions League to be considered amongst the great Prem strikers? Or do you think that his goals and his performances for Spurs already put him into that conversation?
I don't think he needs to win a trophy at this stage. I know people are probably laughing at that there, but you look at his goals and you just look at how good he's been for Spurs all over these years now, and the chances are he's probably going to go on and beat Shearer's record. So for me, I don't think the likes of the people say he might only win a Carabao Cup at Spurs. I don't think even that doesn't change anything for me. I think he's one of the best strikers we've seen in the Premier League, and I don't think that he can won a Premier League. It's really changed because it's a team achievement. The Premier League or Champions League is a team achievement, and no one
Yeah.
can really deny how good he is in his own ability.
Yeah, Callum, thanks for coming on. I know Marty was supposed to be on as well. He actually texted me. He told me he's actually said he's in Portsmouth. He can't get a signal. I think he means Port Salon. He must be absolutely full and he can't get on his phone or something like that there. If he thinks he's in Portsmouth. But couple of quick fire questions before we finish. Can Villa break into the top 4 next year?
No.
Groundhog Day for Everton. Do you see them being in the relegation battle next year? And do you think that there's a good chance they could go down?
Yeah, they're flirting with it for too long, so I wouldn't be shocked if they went down.
Right, and obviously big game tomorrow night for Ireland away to Greece. Obviously, we've seen Holland last night in the Nations League, had an absolute shocker. Doesn't look at all as well in the camp there. You'd expect France, they won their group. Think Ireland, they're never going to get a better chance to qualify, are they?
Well, especially the way we played against France, we should have probably won it, apart from a wonder save at the very end. So I think the confidence is high. So 100%, you're looking at it now, you thinking we beat Greece, you never know.
Yeah, big game. They've obviously did Gibraltar home at Monday, expecting they won that. I think this is the biggest game of the group here. If you can, because this is a banana skin tag, Greece are no mugs. So if they can win that there, it obviously put them in a strong position to qualify. How do you see it going?
I don't know too much about Greece, to be honest, but as you know, we all know Ireland will keep it tight. So I'll go for a cheeky 1-0 Ireland.
1-0 Ireland won. I think that'll make a lot of people happy. Callum, as I say, thanks for coming on. Next week we're going to go through them run-ins a lot more in depth. So we're going to look at teams for 6 games, try and pick the bones out of who's got a stronger start, who we expect to be top after the first few weeks of the season. Look at maybe some of the bigger games, the Christmas fixtures, and obviously the run-ins. Try and do some sort of semi-predictions because it is difficult at the moment with so many teams trying to get players on. But look, Callum, again, thanks for joining me, mate, and I'll see you soon.
No worries, delighted. Thanks very much.
Good man.
Cheers.